Hello and welcome to the Geek Show. I am Rob and let's talk about a new video game. Today it is Metamorphosis from Ovid Works, a Polish developer. And I just want to talk about this before I get any further into the who's and why's and what's and where who's and whatever's of this game. I'm really digging this new wave of games which aren't from America, which aren't from Japan, and at a stretch, the UK, we have something of a video games industry, but compared to Japan and America, not really. The reason I say that is because you get it's kind of like representation, isn't it? Well, it is representation. Stories told from the same perspectives and the same backdrops and the same whatever. It gets kind of repetitive. I mentioned on other things that we do here at the Geek Show that I'm getting kind of sick of movies that take place in New York and Los Angeles, because even though I've never ever been there, either of those places, it's kind of familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. So stories that have been told from European countries and South American countries and countries in Asia which aren't Japan are telling stories from different perspectives that I think are needed in today's world. I go back to another review we had on the channel. I really loved it. It was a game called Mutazone, and I think this is carrying on that sort of tradition of stories that aren't told from traditional game places to do something new. Stories from untraditional game places is kind of a perfect segue, because this game is based on a book from famed Czech surrealist author Franz Kafka. Now, in the book, you play Gregor Samsa, and he turns into a big bug. Bit of a difference there. You still play Gregor Samsa, but instead of playing a big bug, you play a very small bug. And in the first scene, as the game opens, you get out of bed after a night drinking, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you are a tiny bug. And yes, so on one level there's the story that you have to get out of the situation. You're a bug, why has this happened? I need to fix myself and get back to being human. Or Gregor has to fix himself and get back to being human. At the same time, there is scenes of your best friend, Joseph, and something's happened, a crime has been committed, so you have to help him out in any way you can. Which is another segue, and good luck with these segues here. To jump to movies, Czech New Wave was a type of cinema that was made in the 60s and 70s, and just being after the communist rule, there was a lot of anti-bureaucratic, anti-state sentiment. However, this is very much the same. This is very much against bureaucracy. You have to go through the system, you have to get paperwork, you have to have it stamped, you have to go through all of these things that would be normal if you went like DMV, but it's being shrunk down to the smallest possible scale, and the absurdity is derived from that sort of contrast, which creates some incredibly fun ideas. But visually, and the way the story is told, visually you have like aspects of society which pop up throughout the game. One of the first major locations is a gramophone, which is basically a underground gangster-ran club, and you have to deal with certain people there. There's like the femme fatale who pops up throughout the game. Lenny, I think her name was. And later on you get to a city, I guess it would be, but it's a city which is built up and around a projector, which you have to sort out. The puzzles, it's a platform puzzler, a first-person platform puzzler. So a lot of the puzzles is moving from place to place, jumping on things to turn on buttons, or talking to different parts of this bug society to figure out who can do what for who. Again, it's all this idea of bureaucracy. And while we're talking about the story, there is some sort of longevity built into it, because there's two endings. There's one where you can give the big old middle finger to the bureaucracy and see how that ends for you, which is the one that I did, so I'm not going to spoil that. And there's the other ending, in which you can do exactly as you're told. Now, I've only played this through once, so I can't say how that plays out, but there's a choice where you're involved in the fate of Joseph, and you can either do as you're told and go against it. So that's where the multiple ending aspect plays out. going back to the puzzles, they're kind of basic. Nothing is particularly hard to figure out. Essentially, all you really have to do is follow the symbol for the tower, which is another aspect of the story. You have to figure out what is going on, and as you get deeper into the world, you reveal that these bugs all work or in the shadow of this company, essentially, called Towers. Puzzles have a degree of where do I go? Once you figure out where you go, it's just a matter of talking to somebody or jumping on something, really. So it's kind of basic. And at the same time, if you don't know where to go, in the PC version at least, you just press B and the map will zoom out and it'll have little icons on the map, which might take a little bit of getting used to where you need to go. The reason why it might be a little bit difficult to find it is because of the way that the world is figured out. It's level design, essentially. Because you're inside a chest of drawers, you're climbing up a shelf on the side of cupboards, shelves, whatever, or a gramophone or a projector. So they're not built in the same way as a traditional level is, and graphically it all kind of looks the same, because even though each level looks very, very different, once you're in a level, one corner could be another corner, and it doesn't really make any difference. It makes sense within the story, but when you're looking at it, it kind of gets frustrating how many times you've got to go on the map because you can't figure out where you are. But, is an intent there, so I can't be too harsh upon it. I guess graphics are the only real thing left to mention, and yeah, it's a fun art style because you have bugs in outfits that you never really see them in. I mean, admittedly, if you're a big sufferer of entomophobia or the persistent and extreme fear of bugs, this game will just terrify you. But for everybody else, it has some nice visual cues, some nice visual identities. It's a representation of the tower, the way the world is being built out and laid out, and the way it looks, and how bugs have made a society out of bits of wood, combs, pencils, all this stuff. Graphically and the way it plays out, it's very interesting. Two other final notes, the music, which has a really striking operatic and theatrical sense to it, especially in the more dramatic moments, that gives it a real sense of character and place. I really like that. And the human characters that you meet look weird. Joseph's fine, there's a lawyer which looks fine, but there's two investigators, two policemen essentially, and they look weird. Maybe it's inspired or as part of a narrative, as in they're trying to say something through the mannerisms and the way they hold their faces and whatnot. But at the same time, maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. It's only about 5 hours long too, so there's many things to recommend for this. Yeah, it's a good game for people who want something who want to find different stories within video games, who want different ways of telling the story and different types of protagonist, because sometimes you just want something a little bit different with your video games, and honestly, you can't get much different than playing a bug in a Franz Kafka adaptation, can you? But until next time, with a review or a possible mission episode, or many of the other things that we'll be launching very, very soon, including one to look forward to at the end of the month, please do subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.